Introducing the all-new 252 electric range at Hugo Luna Motors. See our Peugeot E2008, now available in electric. This bold SUV boasts a striking design with sleek LED headlamps and a redesigned grille for a powerful presence. With zero CO2 emissions and 156 HP of power, the E2008 delivers efficiency and performance. Discover more at hugolunamotors.ie. Drive the future today.
Heartlands on Midlands 103. Midlands 103. Just great radio.
Good morning and a very warm welcome to Heartlands here in Midlands 103 with me, the Reverend Nigel Gill. The people in darkness have seen a great light. For those who dwell in the shadow of death, a light will shine. And so on October 31st, that darkest of nights, when death is lauded, each Halloween a group of pilgrims from all walks of life, armed with light and lantern, gather with hope trust to journey across the bridge spanning the river Shannon, where many devoid of hope and having lost the will to live have chosen to embrace death through suicide. They say there is light at the end of the tunnel, but while one is in that tunnel, dwelling in the shadow of death or walking in deep darkness, reaching the light at the end of the tunnel may appear illusionary and impossible. And so it is into this darkness of soul that Hope Trust casts its light, signalling to one and all that there is hope. Having once been in that place, but now living in glorious hope to the one for whom darkness is as light, it is a privilege not only to join with Hope Trust, shining a beacon of light into the darkness, but also to pause and to remember those who didn't make it. To stand with those who will always carry the pain of their passing. And finally, to encourage those who presently dwell in the shadow of death, reminding them that a light will shine and that there is hope. And today we're going to focus on stories of hope, of lives that have been transformed by God to His glory. But before that, let us pause for a moment and listen to the reading of Psalm 65, read to us by Charlize.
We're reading from Psalm 65. Praise awaits you, our God in Zion. To you our vows will be fulfilled. You who answer prayer, to you all people will come. When we were overwhelmed by sins, you forgave our transgressions. Blessed are those you choose and bring near to live in your courts. We are filled with the good things of your house, of your holy temple. You answer us with awesome and righteous deeds, God our Saviour, the hope of all the ends of the earth, and of the farther seas, who formed the mountains by your power, having armed yourself with strength, who stilled the roaring of the seas, the roaring of their waves, and the turmoil of the nations. The whole earth is filled with awe at your wonders. Where morning dawns, where evening fades, you call forth songs of joy. You care for the land and water it, you enrich it abundantly. The streams of God are filled with water, to provide the people with grain. For so you have ordained it. You drench its furrows and level its ridges. You soften it with showers and bless its crops. You crown the year with your bounty, and your carts overflow with abundance. The grasslands of the wilderness overflow. The hills are clothed with gladness. The meadows are covered with flocks, and the valleys are mantled with grain. They shout for joy and sing.
Our first story of hope on behalf of Hope Trust this morning is Nick Park sharing of how his life was transformed and turned around. Here's Nick.
I'm Nick Park, and I'm a pastor from Drogheda, and I also lead Evangelical Alliance Ireland. I came to faith through the ministry of the Salvation Army. I was in a Salvation Army hostel for the homeless, and I'd been homeless, living on the streets for 3 years. I had been going to kill myself, and I climbed up some scaffolding outside a cinema that was being renovated, and went up onto the roof of the cinema with the intention of jumping off. I was 100% ready to do it. I just wanted to die, to be honest. I just was fed up. And suddenly, up on there on the roof of the cinema, I realised, I don't know where it came from, because I was an atheist, but it just came, this conviction that if I jumped off that rooftop, I was going into eternity. And I would be going into eternity without Jesus. And I was terrified, absolutely terrified. So I had to clung to this scaffolding, and somebody saw me, and eventually the fire brigade came and carried me down the ladder. Is when I look back to that, I actually find myself so grateful that I didn't jump off the rooftop and that I got to live life. Because if I had died that day, I was 17 years old at the time. And if I had died that day, my life would have been a short life, but that's not the main tragedy. Lots of people have short lives for one reason or another. But my life would have been a miserable life. I would never have enjoyed life. This is now, 44 years later, and I love life. Life's absolutely amazing. And I've had so much joy, and I've learned to love, and I'm just so grateful that I got the opportunity to do that. And I could have denied myself all of that joy and all of that life and all of that fulfillment by making the wrong decision back then. If Jesus had not broken into my life at that moment, I would not be alive today. I have no doubt about that whatsoever. It was actually from that moment on the rooftop, it was almost a year until I finally asked Jesus to come into my life. But he was there waiting for me. This is essential for the church because, suicide is an attack on life. And Jesus is all about life. Jesus said, I came that you might have life, and life in all its fullness. And I believe that the Church of Jesus Christ should be passionate about life. We're passionate about life for the unborn, we're passionate about life for migrants, for asylum seekers, for refugees, for people that are homeless, for people in poverty, for people at the end of life. And so having a passion to do something about the suicide epidemic in Ireland at the moment it's I don't understand why the church wouldn't be passionate about that, to be honest. In our own church, we have 6 people, including several of the pastors, who have gone and basically done the study and done the hard work to qualify as counsellors so that they can help people that are struggling with mental health issues or with suicidal thoughts.
Heartlands on Midlands 103. Midlands 103. Just great radio.
Welcome back to Heartlands here in Midlands 103 with me, the Reverend Nigel Gill. Today, folks, we are looking at Hope Trust, which is a charity that is based in Athlone but has a national appeal. It's a Christian counselling service that is provided, shedding and bringing hope into the area of mental well-being and spiritual well-being, especially around the areas of suicide and coming alongside those who have been troubled by suicide. On Halloween night, October 31st at 7 p.m, they have an annual candlelit walk crossing the bridge. It's a remembrance ceremony that takes place, remembering those who have been lost through suicide, coming alongside those who have been bereaved by suicide, and recognising those who are deeply impacted and affected by suicide. It's been a privilege to have journeyed alongside Hope Trust over the last number of years in regard to this event, and if you are free, I would encourage you to come. It's at 7 p.m, meeting across the street from St. Peter's and Paul's to go and walk across the bridge over the Shannon in a very poignant and moving occasion. And so today we're looking at stories of those who have found hope. A year or two ago, Hope Trust decided to do a video series of those whose lives have been transformed by Jesus Christ and who had found hope in him even though they had been suicidal. And this is Margaret's story. So take a listen as Margaret shares her story with us.
I was married with 3 children, and I'm a widow now. My youngest son died in a motorbike accident, so I have a daughter and a son left. In 1977, my father died of lung cancer, and 4 years later, my eldest brother took his own life. And at that time, it was massive for someone to take their own life. So basically, we never talked about it. We didn't want people knowing. We hid our emotions, and we tried as best we could to get on with life, but it was pretty horrendous, because between losing my father to cancer and then losing my brother 4 months later, it was pretty tough. 2 years later, then my father-in-law died, and it basically then was that I slowly, the marriage started to go, and my husband started to drink and drink more. Maybe that was his way of turning for help. And at that time, we didn't know about counselling. We would have thought the counselling was only for somebody that was mentally ill. We didn't know. Time was going on. It was really affecting me. Basically, I was looking for answers and wasn't getting them. In 2004, on New Year's Day in 2004, I went down to the river and rang him and said that unless he could give me the answers, I was basically going to jump in. And at that stage, I threw the phone. I can't swim. And I threw the phone into the river, and I was at the pier. The phone gone in, and I would have called out to Jesus at that time. Father God, Jesus, just help me, because my head was, as far as I was concerned, my head was gone. I didn't want to die, but I couldn't live. It's hard to explain it. So I was just about to jump in, and as I was going to do it, I looked over and I saw 3 men in the boat. And I thought, oh, Jenny, I can't jump in now because I'm in my own area, local area. If they see me now jumping in, they're going to come to me aid. And I'm going to look a right idiot. Here's me trying to attempt suicide, and I should go all around the country. So I decided to go back to the car and wait till the 3 lads, as I thought, would be gone. And just as I was walking back from the pier to the car, my husband pulled up on the Jeep. And he said, gosh, he said to me, oh, thank God you're not gone. And I said to him, I'm not gone because of them 3 guys there. I said, I was waiting until they'd leave. And he says to me, what 3 guys? And I looked round and there was no boat, no 3 guys. And then he said to me, come home and we'll talk. So I said, okay. And we went home. That was the 1st of January, and it was the 8th of February, it had got so bad again in between, because nothing was happening, no answers, and he was just doing what he was doing. And I went down to the room and took an overdose. My daughter was in the other room, and she said for some reason, it was like something told her, go in and check him, Mammy. And there I saw you taking the 2 tablets. And of course she grabbed them from me and she said, what are you doing? And I just said, I can't cope. I just can't cope. And she was trying to get me out of bed, and I wouldn't get out of the bed. She was saying, I have to get an ambulance, but I have to get up. And she rang my sister-in-law next door. They couldn't get me out of bed. But the next thing, I could see my sister-in-law crying, you're going to die, get up. And all I can remember now, I'm just looking back, and I could remember it was like big drops of tears coming out of her eyes. And they brought me to the hospital, and they couldn't pump me. They had to wait till the next day to see whether I'd live or die. But it turned out that they said if I had taken them 2 extra tablets, I'd be gone. So out of that was in the general hospital. Out of that, I was sent into St. Pat's Hospital in Dublin. So that's the psychiatric hospital. And that's where I started first getting the help. And in there, I met a lady that was a Christian. And I was in there for 9 weeks. And all through that time, She was getting me to read the Bible with her. She asked me to ask Jesus to come into my life and be Lord and Master of my life, that he could help me and that I could trust him. Yeah, she brought me through a journey. It was nearly like I was in there for that time, for her to help me to get to know Jesus. And just, it was incredible. My son was on a motorbike, and it was in July. The 8th of July 2017, and my ex-husband rang me and said to me, Andrew was in an accident and we don't know, it looks very bad. And all I could do was walk up and down the house saying, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. Fresh and green are the pastures where he gives me repose. And I kept saying, I could think of nothing else. I couldn't touch the Bible, I couldn't what. I remember thinking, I just have to trust you, Lord, even in the midst of this. And I went into the morgue where he was. And I prayed and I talked to the Lord and I asked the Lord to help me. And of course, I went to the funeral the whole lot. And I said in the midst of it, like, Lord, this, I know I trust you. But I said, I don't understand this. I don't understand it, but I still trust you. And I said, Jesus, I can't do this myself. But I know with you, I can do anything. Yeah, I can do all things through Jesus Christ who gives me the strength. And it's hard to believe when you go through so much. But, you know, when you come out the other side and you have Jesus, you can actually use your experiences to help other people. Yeah, I just want to say, like, I have 2 beautiful adult children, but they're amazing. I know now, looking back, what I would have put them through. God helped them, and God did help them. But like, I can't begin to imagine when I was in that place that I wasn't able to be there for them. But they turned out such 2 wonderful people, and they're so good to me now. And I just have to say thank God for them. I could beat myself up for all the times I wasn't there, but that's not going to do me or anybody else any good. The best thing I can do for them now is be well, and if I need help, if I need counselling, go and get it. For me, the Christian counselling is the way, you know, is the way. And I just thank God for it all, and for my 2 children now that's there with me, and I'm more saner now than I've ever been.
Fall in love with 252 exclusive offers on the Citroën range at Hugo Luna Motors today. Explore our impressive collection of Citroën cars and vans, where advanced comfort, style, safety and reliability all come together. Order your 252 today and take advantage of low-rate finance, a €500 deposit contribution and avail of a free home charger. Book your test drive today at hugolunamotors.ie. Citroën, for everyone, like no one.
Citroën. Heartlands on Midlands 103. Midlands 103. Just great radio.
Welcome back to Heartlands here in Midlands 103 with me, the Reverend Nigel Gill. And folks, today we are focusing in on the fact that Hope Trust are a charity that are doing a wonderful work out from Athlone, and also that they have an event coming up on Halloween night where they have a very beautiful, moving and poignant ceremony taking place as they walk across the bridge in Athlone from St. Peter's and Paul's across the bridge and down to the Civic Centre. The function of the event is simply to be a light in the darkness, as each person carries a lantern or a lamp with them on the walk. It's remembering those that have passed through suicide. It's standing with those who have been bereaved by suicide. It's coming alongside those who need counsel and need help, those who may be suicidal, which is the focus of Hope Trust as a charity. And so now, the next story we're going to listen to is Phil's story. Phil is someone that you will be familiar with. She is a facilitator with Midlands Living Links, but is someone who has been bereaved by suicide. And so Hope Trust, as I said, did a video series, and they went and asked Phil, would she go and share of her experience and how it is that the Lord went and helped her. This is Phil's story.
Well, my name is Phil, and I'm from Offaly, Kinnishty in Offaly. And I am a mother to 7 children. I think I did the best job I could with the tools I had as being a mother. Can I tell you about PJ? PJ, he was the heart and soul of the party, of course. He loved music, and he played in a boy band, their own boy band, and the name was Charade. So he did his Leaving Cert, and he went from there on to be a nurse. So he took that one and seemed, I mean, you never know what's going on the inside, but seemed to be really enjoying it, you know, and loved his nursing. See, he had a great listening ear. Well, in 1995, we had a kind of a challenging year within the family. I remember it was just Tony and I at home on New Year's Eve. And you know, when the New Year's Eve was ringing in and ringing out, and I just said to Tony, I said, thanks be to God, Tony, I said, that year is gone. And I little knew what that year was preparing us for. That year in 1995 was preparing us, in hindsight now, for what was about to happen in 1996. So what happened in 1996 of August, the 16th come 17th, he went out one night with his boys, and I came home and himself and his friends and a few more of them were there in the kitchen, and the kitchen was in a mess, and of course there was no dinner down, and as normal I went in, I said, what the flip are you doing? And Peter got up from where he was down in the lounge, and I'll always remember I was standing in front of the cooker at the time. I remember him coming up to me and he said, Mother, I need a hug. Give us a hug. And I said, right. So I turned around to him and he squeezed the life out of me. He absolutely squeezed the life out of me. That was the last hug I got from PJ. But I little knew at the time. Twins went out also that night later on, and they rang me about 2 o'clock. And I always said a few prayers on the way when I'm travelling into Caroline. And I went in anyway and I met the twins. And I said, where's PJ? And one said, he's gone off with the lads, and another said he was gone home. So I said, right, so I better bring you home anyway, like, or whatever. So we came home anyway, and of course, he wasn't home. So the next following morning, Tony got up to go to work, but something drew him to the shed. He bypassed his boots, and he went out to the shed. And he looked and he seen PJ. He came down to the room Saturday morning, I was still in bed, and he came down to the room, and I always remember it. And his hands up to his head like this, and he said, Phil, he said, we'll never deal with this. And I said, oh, what's wrong, Tony? And he said, we will never deal with this, Phil. And I thought it was a cow, or one of the cattle in the field. And he said, Peter's gone, and he's not coming back. So I went out. Of course, people started arriving. Word got out very fast because Tony made phone calls because our children were here in Taterlock. A crowd started coming into the yard anyway, and I went out and I started with Peter, and I did his act of contrition and said a few words to him, you know, the usual thing. And I got a blanket, went in, I got a blanket and I pushed it around him, and it was horrific. It was horrific. But then, do you know what? The whole thing turned to shock, and the shock, it kind of stilled me. So the ambulance came, and I don't know what it was, but something inspired me. I said, Jesus, I said, nobody said the prayers. So I got up in the back of the ambulance, I stood in the back of the ambulance with Peter, and I did rosary. Well, I'll tell you, the impact started that morning. It was as if a monster just came outside our door, and I mean a vicious monster, and pushed that door in, and we had no control over it, and it just shattered. It shattered everything in front of it, and everyone. It destroyed our family. But the one thing that did come into me that morning was, I said, God, I am not getting angry over this. I said, there's going to be no anger. But I trusted in God. God was my anchor. He was really my anchor. Without him, I would not have got through this. You don't get over. People expect you to get over. You never get over suicide. And I was lying on the couch, beneath his picture, Dr. Phil was talking about just letting go. And it was this letting go, his peace, that said, maybe this is what I need to do. To give him give myself permission, move on in life. But I cried and I cried. I felt I'd let him go free, so I just put it as free. I have given you back. God knows 'twas not easy. As I gazed on your picture, my legs felt unsteady. That was a hard task which was put unto me, but I summoned the strength to allow you go free. 3 years it had taken to bid you farewell. In those months and years, my living was hell. I called out your name as each day begun. Existence was hard. I needed you, son. I guess I will never know how you did go, but God knows you took a part of me too. Take care of that ship. It's a bit of my heart. 'Tis our secret connection whilst we are apart. As I looked at your eyes in that picture frame, it tore me apart just to mention your name. I told you I loved you, but for you as for me, I knew it was time to allow you go free. So goodbye, little fellow, and thanks for the years which we spent together in laughter and tears. Your memory is precious, it always will be, but your spirit, my child, I just had to set free. Of all the words of tongue or pen, the saddest of all is what might have been. It was a short-term loan. But I knew I had God. I knew I had God. I would have had God all my life, thankfully. But I trust him and depend on him so much to pull me through this slack.
Heartlands on Midlands 103. Midlands 103. Just great radio.
Welcome back to Heartlands here in Midlands 103 with me, the Reverend Nigel Gill. And folks, now it's time from the main person herself. This is Linda Rowett, sharing with us what Hope Trust is about, her own personal journey, and how it is that Hope Trust can make a difference. But not only how Hope Trust can make a difference, but also how we as the body of Christ ought to make a difference. Here is Linda.
My name's Linda Rowett, and I head up Hope Trust, which is a Christian charity, and our main focus is helping people with a Christian perspective on suicide and self-harm. At about the age of 8 or 9, I was molested by a family friend, and it left me feeling really ashamed. At the age of 14, around 14, I thought the only way to end the feelings that I was really struggling with was to attempt suicide, which was not successful. I didn't see it as a fortunate thing at that time. In fact, for the next 10 years, I was really struggling with many thoughts about death being an escape. And then I met a friend who actually started talking to me about Jesus. I thought, who is this Jesus that she's talking about? Because I'd been to church and I certainly hadn't met this Jesus. All I knew about him was that he was in a manger as a baby. I was asking question after question until she eventually sent me to her pastor, who really introduced me to Jesus, and I mean, it was just life-changing. I felt as if a huge weight had come off my shoulders. I had no fear. I've had the most fulfilling life ever since, because I know what it's like to be accepted, I know what it's like to be loved, and I know what it's like to receive healing. So that's what I desire for other people. Because he's everything to me. He's really the source of life and hope and joy and fulfillment. In 2005, Graham Wiley was walking through the woods. He'd read a report in the paper about 5 suicides in the Roscommon area in a matter of weeks, and he was really troubled by it, and he was asking God, and God sent him Proverbs 24 verse 11, which is, deliver those who are drawn away to death. And it's a pretty powerful mandate to be given. So that's what Hope Trust was founded on, the mandate to actually try and bring hope and walk alongside people who are actually on the brink of death. So our desire is to communicate hope to people, communicate that there's something beyond the despair that they might be feeling at this time. I can't understand when churches are not involved with this, because I think it's a really critical issue that we should be dealing with, and that we are bearers of hope. We're bearers of life, and we can bring that joy to people. As a church, I think we should be listening to what people are saying. See, this is how we show people that we love them. And how else will people know that we love them unless we're walking alongside of them?
The people in darkness have seen a great light. For those who dwell in the shadow of death, a light will shine. And so on October 31st, that darkest of nights, when death is lauded, each Halloween a group of pilgrims from all walks of life, armed with light and lantern, gather with Hope Trust to journey across the bridge spanning the river Shannon, where many devoid of hope and having lost the will to live have chosen to embrace death through suicide. They say there is light at the end of the tunnel, but while one is in that tunnel, dwelling in the shadow of death or walking in deep darkness, reaching the light at the end of the tunnel may appear illusionary and impossible. And so it is into this darkness of soul that Hope Trust casts its light, signalling to one and all that there is hope. Having once been in that place, but now living in glorious hope to the one for whom darkness is as light, it is a privilege not only to join with Hope Trust, shining a beacon of light into the darkness, but also to pause and to remember those who didn't make it. To stand with those who will always carry the pain of their passing. And finally, to encourage those who presently dwell in the shadow of death, reminding them that a light will shine and that there is hope. Well, the question that I must ask is this: will you be there, 7 p.m, Halloween night, at the castle just across from St. Peter's and Paul's in Athlone, to join another person who is indeed holding out the beacon of hope, a light in the darkness? Hope to see you there.
Heartlands on Midlands 103.